Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're a new subscriber, you're welcome. For those of us that have been here, thank you. I do hope you enjoy this video. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to draft a Princess Dart Bustier. So as you can see, I've set out my margin for the top and for the side. So the margin will be a guideline. It's very important to do this, to be a guideline for your measurements. So the first point you want to mark is your armhole point. Now to mark my armhole point, what I usually do, I divide my bust measurement by 6 and I add 1.5 inches to it. And approximately I have 8 inches for my measurement. But you're going to be marking it away from your shoulder drop. So what the first thing I mark is my 1 inch for my shoulder drop. Then I'll come from that point and mark my 8 inches. Then go back to my shoulder point again to continue my markings. So at this point I'll mark my bust point, my under bust point, my waistline. So to have a straight line, I am going to take note of these markings minus this. You're not going to include this, no. So I have 9 inches, 10 inches, 14, 18 inches. I'll bring this measurement here to have a straight line. So I have 9 inches, 10 inches, 14 inches, 18 inches. Then I am going to take a rule. So I've squared off my lines. I am going to label them now. This is my shoulder line. So I've succeeded in labeling my line, my shoulder line, armhole line, bust line. This is my under bust line and this is my waistline. So the next thing you're going to do is to continue with our measurement. So now we're going to put in our shoulder measurement on the shoulder line. Okay. So for my shoulder measurement, I have 16 inches. I'll divide it by 2. I have 8 inches. I'll mark that point here. I'll still come at the armhole point and mark that same measurement. That's 8 inches. Then with my ruler, I'm going to create a broken line. This line will guide me for my main armhole that I'm going to create. Okay. So when you're done with this, we have input our shoulder measurement. At the armhole line, I'm going to put my bust measurement so I can get the point where my armhole curve will stop. So at the armhole line, you're going to put it. My measurement is 9.5 inches. That's if I divide my bust by 4, I have 9.5 inches. So when I get this point, from this 1 inch, that's the shoulder drop we're going to be creating for the armhole. On this shoulder drop, I am going to look for the middle point of this, and which is around this point, and you're going to come in by 1/2 inch from that point so as to get a perfect curve for your armhole. So when you come in by 1/2 inch, you're going to take your armhole curve and you're going to create your curve. So what I usually do is I'll connect the 3 points 1, 2, 3 with my curve like so. I'll look for the points where they all match together. Then I'm going to take my curve. So at this point we have gotten our armhole curve. So the next thing I'm going to do is to get my neckline. So whatever neckline you want to do, it depends on your choice. I'm just going to do a basic 3 inches down and 3.5 inches by width. So you can use your curve to create, you can use your ruler to create the curve that you want. Okay, but if not, you can also use your free hand to connect the lines. So whichever, that is your choice. So I'm just going to take this down a little first, then from that point I'm going to connect, because my ruler cannot cover it all at once. So let me just leave it at this point. All right, then from this point now I'm going to do a shoulder slant to this 1 inch at this point. So I've created the upper part of this first here. So the next thing you want to do now is to look for your bust span. Now the bust span is 4 inches for me, because I approximate, it's supposed to be 3.8, approximated to 4 inches, and how I got the 3.8 is my bust measurement divided by 10 inches. gave me 3.8. You can try that for other bust circumferences that you have. So I'm going to connect these 4 inches together. So this is my bust span. So after connecting them, the next thing you want to do is to know how much you want to take in for your under bust to create your cup, to create your bustier. So I am taking in 2 inches. 2 inches is okay. You can do 1.5, depends on how curvy you want it to turn out. And I want 2 inches, so I'm going to, on my under bust line, I'll mark the 2 inches, and on my waistline also I'm going to mark 2 inches. I'm going to connect these 2 lines. Then with my curve, I can easily connect from my under bust line to the bust line. So this full part should be on the bust line, while the curved area of your ruler should be on your under bust line. And I've created that curve like so. Then I'll come to this point where the armhole divides. I'll also connect down to this point. So almost the same thing. So this ruler actually makes the work easier for you. Once you have this, the work is much easier. So we are taking away this is a dart. We're going to be cutting this off later. Now the next thing we're doing is to put our measurement on the other part. We have put our measurement on the armhole, so I'm going to put in my measurement for the other part. And for my bust line, of course we know that the bust measurement is 9.5. I'll continue with that, 9.5. And you're going to come to the under bust line. My under bust measurement is 32, which is 8 inches, and I'm going to add this 2 inches I took to accommodate the dart. So I'm going to be having 10 inches. Okay, then on the waistline, my waist measurement is 34 inches, and that 34 inches you're going to divide it by 4, and you're going to be getting 8.5, and at the end of the day we are marking 10.5. So at this point is our measurement. So I'm going to be connecting these lines. Connect this line. The next thing we're going to do is to take in our side dart, the bust line dart. Now, to know how much to take in, you need to minus your back length from your half length. So my half length is 18 inches. If you minus 16 from 18 inches, you're going to be having 2 inches. So that means it's that 2 inches I'll be taking away from my bust dart. So that means I'll be marking 2 inches at this point, and I'm going to connect that to the bust line like so. So I'll connect this, and this also will go out. So this dart at this point will be transferred to this armhole line. So we're going to do a dart manipulation, or you can call it dart transfer. At the time we slash here open, we close this point to create the dart needed for this point. So we're going to come to that. So at this point you can see that we have been able to create a basic bodice bustier with a bust dart. From this point you can be able to use this to recreate your pattern into other kind of bustier. Now let's continue with the drafting of the back. Now to draft the back part, I'm going to create my margin. So I'll just take this in so I can bring the back closer a little. So I'll just create my margin that I want to work with. So let me mark the back with another color. So I'm creating my margin now. So this is where my measurement will start from. All right. So I'm going to look for my lengths. Now for this particular one, let's look for the length. I only need my shoulder to my armhole point. Of course, the total length for my shoulder to my armhole point is 9 inches, and 10 inches for my bust point, and 14 inches for the arm under bust and the rest. But I don't need the bust point. What I just need is my armhole line and my waistline. But we're not going to be marking 18 inches for the waistline. Remember, we have the measurement for the back waistline, and it is 16 inches. So we'll be working with 16 inches for the back. So these are the two measurements I need. So I'm going to extend the line so I can square it up correctly. I have 9 inches and I have 16 inches. So with this, I'm going to create my line for my points. Okay, because we are creating a mirror pattern means they are going to be like opposite. We're going to get the full measurement we want to use for, that's the whole width we want to be working with. So the whole width we'll be working with right now is the bust measurement. Okay, just the bust measurement. So I'm going to stop at the bust measurement, which is 9.5. But if you want to add a little bit of some inches to be on the safer side, you can do that. But I'm just going to work with my main bust measurement divided by 4. So I'm going to still mark it up here. That's 9.5. So I'm going to connect the lines, and sure that's what I have here. Trying to confirm my, oh, it's wrong. This is wrong. So this is the line I will stop. So I'm measuring from this point to this point. Okay, so the first thing you want to measure is your shoulder. Our shoulder is 8 inches, so you know we're measuring towards this point. So let me just work with it this way. Shoulder is 8 inches. All right, you measure from here to here. This is our 8 inches. You're going to bring down that measurement to the armhole line. Okay, and you have 8 inches, and you're going to connect that with a broken line because this is not your main armhole core. Okay, so remember we are coming down by 1 inch. You come down by 1 inch, and this is already the width of our bust. So I'll just look for the midpoint. After coming down by 1 inch, I'll look for my midpoint. Of course, we know that this is constant for me. This 1 inch coming down is constant for me because what I have for my armhole length is 8 inches. Okay, so at the midpoint, the same thing we apply to the front. Look for the midpoint, then you come in by ½ inch, or you can come in by 1/4 of an inch. So I also like to come in at the back by ½ inch. So I'm just going to connect these points. So I have my points 1, 2, 3. So this, I already have the measurement for my bust circumference put here. So this is the full measurement. So I don't need to look for my bust measurement divided by 4 here again. So that's why I'm not looking for it. So this is already my points, my point 2 and my point 3, and we're going to connect. So when you're done with that, we're going to do the neckline. So let's remind ourselves what we used for our neckline. So we did a width of 3.5 inches. So this 3.5 inches is a must, and you must apply it to the back so that the shoulder line will align properly when you're stitching. So take note of that 3.5 inches, and you can come down by whatever measurement you want to come down. So I am going to come down by 2 inches, and you're going to connect this line, this point, with your curve. Okay, so if you feel your curve cannot connect it for you, you can always make sure to use your free hand. Okay, so at this point I'm going to drop my shoulder. So the next thing you want to do now is to take in the curves for the back. Now remember that the back is not a straight panel, okay, and it's curvy. By the time you take a look at your back, you find out that it's not straight. So because the shape of the body is not straight, you take in the curve for the back. So I usually come in by 1 inch, then you're going to connect it up to the midpoint of your armhole. So I have 4 inches from the line. I'm going to look for the midpoint of the armhole from my shoulder line. So from my shoulder line I have 5 inches. That means it is around this point. So I'm going to take these measurements that I took in here, this 1 inch, all the way to that point. Okay, so I no longer need this point. I no longer need this point now. So I'll be measuring from here. So for my dart, I'll measure from here 4 inches. Remember, you're going to measure 4 inches, and you're coming down about 1 inch from, or ½ inch from, your armhole line. Okay, so I'm working with 1 inch. Okay, let me work with 3/4 of an inch. So it's between 1 inch to 1/4 of an inch. Any line between that you can work with. So I'm taking the darts of 1 inch, ½ inch from each side for the back. So I'm just going to create my dart leg. So I'm done with that. Now I'll put my measurements. So remember, this is our new line you're measuring from. So you're measuring now, our bust point is here at this point. That's our measurement for the bust has increased out of the line, and coming down to the waistline, our waist is 8 inches, 8.5 inches rather. That's 17 is 8.5. That's 34. So you measure from here 8.5, and remember we took 1 inch for that here. That's 9.5. So I'm going to mark it at this point. So I reconnect my lines. So first of all, I'll just connect this and this. Then so that's this for my back. Okay, so we are done drafting the front and the back of our princess Dart Bustier. So if you want, also you can do a princess dart for the back. The same thing applies with what we did to the front. So the only thing you're going to do is, when you get this midpoint and you take in your armhole at that point, you're just going to use your curve and connect from this point which you have here. You connect it all the way to the top. Okay, and that will give you your princess dart for the back. So to continue with the front, we are going to first of all cut out the piece. Now I'm going to cut out the piece, and I'll cut it whole first, and we'll continue. So just a brief note. Now you can see that the back and the front are not equal. This is because the front accommodates the bust, while the back is flat and does not accommodate anything. So by the time you take in the bust dart and transfer it to the armhole to become the armhole dart, you are going to have equal length for front and the back. So you do not have to worry about the length not being equal. As long as you did the right calculation, if your own length is if your front length, let's say your half length for the front is 17 inches and that of your back is 16 inches, that means it's just 1 inch you are going to take from this point. But if yours is like mine, 18 inches and 16, that means you're taking 2 inches. Or if yours is 17 inches for the front and 15 for the back, that means you're also taking 2 inches. All you have to do is to look for the difference between your half length and your back half length. That's the front half length and the back half length, for you to know how much to apply to your bust dart. So I'm going to cut this out now. So I've succeeded in cutting out the front. You can see I left space here because I'm going to true my pattern. Truing my pattern means to connect the lines properly by the time I am done. So the first thing I want to do is to cut from this point. So I'm going to cut from this point like so. So after cutting this out, you want to slash through and end at the bust line. So you slash through this line. And you're going to end there. Now, I'm going to look for the midpoint of this dart, so I can be able to true my pattern. So the midpoint is around this point, and I'll look for that midpoint. So after ruling the line, you're going to fold from this midpoint. You're going to fold, okay, and you're going to take it upward away from you. Take it upward away from you. So as you can see, the lines have shifted at this point. So you're going to connect the line properly. So even if you don't connect it properly, like, you can use your tracing wheel also. So you can use your tracing wheel so as to transfer the marking to the other part of your the paper, okay, because this is a new marking. So when you're done with that, you can open this up, and if you come closer, I have a new line here, and it goes like this. Okay, so you can decide to cut out your pattern that way, but for me, I am cutting it out, so there was no need for me to have done that. So I'm cutting mine off. Okay, so when you're done truing the pattern, that's when you are going to cut the dart out. So you're going to carefully, now you're not going to cut all the way to the end, okay? You're not going to cut all the way. So the truing of the pattern, you can see when you bring the pattern together at that point, it stays, and closing up this point has opened up the armhole line to give us a dart at that point. So we're going to close this with a masking tape. So you can use your masking tape to close it up. So now I've succeeded in taping down the side, as you can see, and what's left for me to do now is to cut off other parts. So I'm going to cut this out now, but before cutting it out, make sure to blend the lines, especially this one, out, to have a curve around that point. So I've succeeded in cutting this off. So I'm going to cut every other part. So next, now I'm going to work on the back. So for the back, you just follow the lines all the way. You through here, through this point. So the first thing you want to do is to cut out the outer lines. So I'm supposed to through this point. So if you through it, you're going to see that there's a little bit of line at that point. Okay. So I'm going to through that to make sure I have a straight line. So you're going to have something like this, going like that. Okay. Remember, this is our new line. I didn't add any seam allowance to this pattern. I didn't add any seam allowance, no zipper allowance, nothing allowance is on this pattern. It's just a basic block. Remember, this is my new line. So here you have it for the back. And you have the front here, and you have the back here. So you're going to label this, and you're going to label. This is your front bodies. Here will be unfold. Okay, and you're going to be cutting this unfold. Cut this, cut two of this, cut two of this unfold will probably give you two, and this is your back bodies. And you're going to cut two of this too. All right, so when you're done, you're going to trace your pattern to your fabric, adding your sewing allowance all around. Here you're going to be adding your zipper allowance of 1 inch. You may add your sewing allowance of 1 inch if you use 1 inch to sew, or 2 inches, or any amount you use. The same thing applies here. You're going to add ½ inch all around here, all around, and you add your sewing allowance, that's the same allowance for the side seam, maybe 1 inch or 2 inches, depends on how many inches you work on. And to that note, we will cut the sleeve now.